Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second part of our series tonight. My name is Danae Frost, and I'm an assistant director in admissions. This is my fourth year in the office, and I'm a 2016 Hope grad, so we're excited that you guys are here tonight. Obviously, if you were here last week, you saw that we did this Zoom call with students and some alumni, and tonight we'll be doing the same sort of format with faculty. Certainly as a small liberal arts school, faculty play a huge role in your life at Hope academically. But for me, some of my faculty have remained some of my biggest mentors in my life, talking to them, texting them, that kind of stuff. So certainly ask your questions. We're on YouTube, and so you can see that there's a place for you to ask questions. So please feel free to jump in. We'll certainly have time at the end for you to get those questions answered. And like I said, this is the second part of the series, Evening with Hope. We are doing this throughout this week and then again on April 20th. So normally this Saturday we would be planning for Admitted Student Day. Obviously, with the circumstances going on, things are a little bit different, but we're excited to come to you virtually throughout this time. And on April 20th, that is our Dutch Blitz session. That is truly one of my favorite parts of the day. It is just for prospective students to meet other prospective students, to get to know them a little bit better before orientation. So if you're looking to learn more about Hope in different departments, you'll hear from our Boerigter Center, Study Abroad, from other Hope parents all this week. And then on April 20th, we'll be doing Dutch Blitz, which is just for prospective students. So if you're interested in learning more about that, make sure you talk to your admissions rep, email one of us, text, call whoever your admissions rep is, and we will get you signed up for that. So tonight we are going to start with our provost, Dr. Katie Short-Thompson, and then we'll bring in a faculty panel of 3 faculty from Hope, and then also get the chance to ask questions at the end that you might have. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Short-Thompson. So we are going to get started with the first question. So Dr. Short-Thompson joined us at Hope 3 years ago. She came from the University of Cincinnati system. So as somebody that has come from a larger network of schools, bigger schools, what do you see as big school versus small school? What attracted you to Hope in the beginning?
Great. Thank you, Danae, and welcome everyone. It's good to have all of you here virtually. It's interesting. They're very different environments. So I had spent my entire life, my whole education myself, and then my entire career in public environments and fairly large institutions. My last institution had, 47,000 students and, 17,000 employees. And, I just was looking for something different, and I have found it. And I love the fact that it's a more relational environment. It's a smaller environment. It's a place where people know everyone's name and care about each other personally and professionally. And so, as a leader, it's certainly wonderful to have a sense of everyone, what they're doing and what their roles are at Hope. But it's also just wonderful to know the students, the student leaders, and just to have a sense of how everyone's engaged with one another. I love the residential environment here at Hope, and I love the spiritual and holistic sense of the college itself. So there are just so many ways in which it's different. One of the biggest things I've said often is that it's just, you're not a number here at Hope. And, the fact that we know each other's names is one sign, but certainly another sign is that, when you look around and you see just how many of our students are engaged in the really high impact practices of the college, it just makes for a richer learning environment. So there's so many reasons that I love it. I could go on and on.
Yeah, great. I think we all could. And you just mentioned this, something that is unique about a small school or about Hope especially is that you're not just a number. And so, for example, my story, I was looking big school, small school, and I was a completely undecided student coming in academically. I really did not feel like I had a good fit, knowing what I wanted or how that would relate to a career. How would you go a little bit deeper into explaining maybe how we do academics from an undecided perspective? We have 80 different majors. How does Hope really help students from that lens? Kind of the balance of gen eds in your major, a little bit more of like that academic program.
Yeah. So it's funny, over my career, which is about 25 years now, I've really changed my mind in the way I think about when it's important to change your major or declare your major. And so, as a student myself early on, I thought it was so essential to begin first semester, knowing what I would do for life. But the truth is, I think it's more important for students to declare their major when they know it for themselves and when they've selected it. And I think Hope does a great job of setting up an academic program that allows for students to take the time that they need to know, where their skill sets are and where their aptitudes are and what they love. And one of the things that I believe strongly is that students who choose their majors for themselves are likelier to stick with those majors, love the careers they end up in. And, the truth is 35 to 40% of students come to school and have no idea what they want to do. 18-year-olds maybe shouldn't know what they want to do for the rest of their lives, and that's okay. So I would just say to all of you who don't know yet what you want to study, just take a deep breath. We'll help you figure it out. One of the beauties is we have a thing called first year seminar, and I've taught it myself. And I can tell you that I worked with my class of students to help them to really think about what are their gifts and what are they good at? What do they love? And how does that align with a major and with a career field? And, we give our students a year and a half to figure it out for the most part. And that's a beautiful thing, time. Just to be able to figure it out with people who care about you and who know a lot about these different majors and fields. So, I think it's really tempting to want to satisfy your aunt or uncle or parent to say, this is what I'll major in with great certainty when you're 17 and a half years old. But most people don't know, and that's okay. And you'll find it and you'll figure it out and you'll be all the better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So something we also talk a lot about at Hope is being a liberal arts college. Can you talk a little bit about what being a liberal arts college means to you, how you see that playing out in Hope and our students? That's a question I get a lot from my students is, oh, I've heard you're a liberal arts college. I sort of know what that is, but I don't really know how to explain it.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the things that makes us distinct is the fact that we have a really large general education program that provides a whole host of liberal arts education opportunities. So what I love about Hope is that regardless of the major that the student selects, that the students who graduate from Hope or a liberal arts school will emerge from the institution with a really broad array of understandings, not just a little bit of this and that, but a lot of this and that. And so it's, being able to think critically. It's being able to engage in mathematical or scientific reasoning. It's being able to write well and communicate well. There are just a lot of different sort of educational foundations that occur in a liberal arts environment. And regardless of whether you are in the major that you're then in a career for 35 years from now, or whether you frankly make changes throughout your life, I think a liberal arts education grounds you deeply in a lot of different elements of a well-rounded education. And that's really what liberal arts is. It means you're sort of hip deep in a lot of different areas and you emerge with a great understanding, a good amount of knowledge, and a whole lot of skill sets. And frankly, those will allow all of our students to essentially travel throughout their lives with a great, just with great success and great ability.
Yeah, absolutely. As somebody that, again, came in undecided, I think if you had told me at 17, oh, some of your favorite classes in college will be something called cultural heritage or religion or those types of things, you wouldn't know that coming into Hope. But I'm so thankful to have that background because then it made me feel that much more confident when I was ready to declare a major that said, you've taken a lot of different departmental classes, you've explored a ton of different subjects. This is how they intersect, but this is where you're really that passionate about.
Yep.
And so something that's also unique about Dr. Short Thompson is that she's our provost, but she is also a mom of a Hope student. And so we wanted to get her take on how Hope has impacted her as a mom and how she's seen Hope impact her son in the time since he started into what maybe online learning is looking like for him. So to get her perspective as a mom as well.
Yeah, so Danae, you're absolutely right. It's interesting because I came into this role, I had been a dean and now I'm a provost, which is a chief academic officer for those who have no idea what a provost is. But the truth is, I think one of the greatest surprises of this experience at Hope has been the fact that I've had the great opportunity of watching our son flourish as he's been a student here. So an interesting story is that my son was actually recruited before I was to this institution. And you can imagine his surprise when we essentially started together at the same time, first year student. And so the truth is, it's been thrilling for me to watch my son thrive and to watch all of the ways that he has grown to love higher education as much as his mother does. And I'm so grateful to all of the faculty and the staff who have really invested in him. So let me give you some examples. So our son is now a junior, and he came to Hope undecided, like we were just talking about. And frankly, he's a really smart kid, good in math and science. And a lot of people had said you should be an engineer because that's sort of the knee-jerk reaction for anyone who's good at math and science. And yet I felt really strongly that he should choose for himself what his major should be, because I believe actually what I just said, and that is it's always best when the student chooses for himself. So he just took a lot of classes and found that he loves psychology and mathematics. And he has now really found his niche at Hope and loves his program in psychology, is engaged in undergraduate research in experimental psychology, and again, has this math bend to his mind. So he's good at quantitative research. And so I'm just so excited for him because he's figured it out on his own with his colleagues, with his faculty members. And I will say, just personally, he's had the most remarkable advisor who has helped him every step along the way. You can imagine being the provost, I say, a million miles away from all of his faculty and his advisors. I say not a word. In fact, we have different last names, and I kind of hope they don't know he's my child. But the truth is, they're good to him, and they have helped him, and they've advised him, and they've listened to him. Furthermore, he's had a chance to have an opportunity to be involved in things like athletics. So he, when he started at Hope, he played in D3 lacrosse and had that great opportunity. So I can speak as a mom of a lacrosse player that he had the opportunity to be on a team and had an amazing coach who cared deeply for him, both in the season and also when he was injured. I think that's another hallmark of Hope, is that this is a place, again, that you're not just a number. So when he was injured once, his coach was the one who was texting him almost as much as his mother. And I love that about Hope, that, again, people deeply care about the individuals who are in their classes, not just the students. And lastly, I would say that he's had this great opportunity to learn undergraduate research with his faculty. And so what's really cool is that he's been writing research that he's been engaged in with the faculty and some of the students in his class. And what's really cool is that he has had the opportunity to present his research at an academic conference. He's actually, first author in one of his papers. And one day he said to me, "Mom, do you know how cool that is?" And I thought, seriously, you're asking the provost if she knows how cool it is that you're first author? I kind of get this, buddy, but it's pretty great that he has the opportunity to do things that some graduate students are just starting to get to do. And this was as a sophomore, as a junior. So he's just had a really rich experience, and then add to it the residential experience. He's had a great time. He's been in a fraternity. And so, he's had a great academic experience, but trust me, he's had plenty of fun.
Yes, I always try to say Hope for me was always that perfect balance of academic rigor. Very few times did I ever feel like, oh my gosh, like I am the smartest person in this room. Like there are so many people at Hope that are ready to challenge you, to do research, to do presentations with, but at the same time to be able to balance that in such a collaborative way in group projects with your faculty, with office hours, or just going to breakfast or lunch with them. I think there's the element that feels intimidating with college academics, but at Hope it felt so much more welcoming than other places I was looking or other places on some students' lists. So
one other thing I would add, Danae, is what's fun for me is now watching him think about the next step for his career. And you can imagine how thrilling it is for me to learn that on his own, he's determined that he wants to pursue a doctorate and he wants it to be in psychology. And now he and his advisor and his research mentor are literally looking around the country for the best match for what his interests are. So I'm just grateful. I think it's so fun for me to see. I think about it as, imagine for each of you, if your child loved what you love and did it in his own way. And so it's his, it's not just mine. So it's just a really cool thing to see your kid come to life and to be nurtured and cared for as he has been at Hope.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So we are going to bring Dr. Short-Thompson back at the end if you have questions for her. But now we're going to transition into talking with 3 of our faculty members. So we're going to be speaking with Dr. Fred Johnson in the history department, Dr. Jeff Johnson in chemistry, and Dr. Lauren heard it from communication. So again, if you have questions, feel free to ask them on the side. We will get to those at the end. I have some questions that I will ask each of them, but make sure if you have questions on academics or even life outside of Hope academically, ask those at the side and we will get to them at the end. So I just told you just briefly what department they are each in, but I'm going to ask each faculty member to just say their name, their department, maybe 1 or 2 classes that they teach normally, as well as how long they've been at Hope. So Jeff, we'll start with you.
All right, so my name is Jeff Johnson. I'm in the Department of Chemistry. I've been here since 2007, and sometimes I would say that's been like 5 or 6 years, but it's actually my 13th year already here on campus, and I typically teach organic chemistry.
Fred, if you want to go next.
My name is Fred Johnson. I'm in the History Department. I've been at Hope since the fall of 2000. Some of the classes I teach include U.S. military history, the history of U.S. foreign policy, and the American Civil War.
And I'm Lauren Harrett. I've been at Hope just since 2017, so this is my 3rd year here. And I typically, if you can call 2.5 years typical, teach classes in crisis communication and quantitative research methods.
So something that I talked a little bit about with Dr. Short-Thompson was the relationships each of you build, not only as a faculty in your classes, but how you build those relationships with students outside of those classes. Would each of you mind talking a little bit about what that looks like for you, maybe specific to your department, or how you balance what that looks like for you, not only as a professor, but as an advisor, mentor, and really how you build relationships with students at Hope?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in first. One of the things that we haven't yet talked about, but I think is pretty common across departments is study abroad opportunities and May terms. And one of the projects that the communication department has is we do have a couple of May terms to different places like Liverpool, Hawaii. One, it was heading to Japan until it got canceled. We've also had some to other places like Ireland. And so that provides a lot of opportunity for faculty to travel with 10 to 15 students. I know, for example, Fred also does these May terms as well, but it's a really different and unique opportunity to get to know students, in a smaller context. You're traveling together. And one of the things that I found, I had the opportunity to co-lead a May term this past May, and I found that those relationships extended back onto campus. And so once every couple weeks, I'm out getting coffee or lunch with a couple of those students who are still here, and just have opportunity to hear how their classes are going, what questions they have, the drama in their sorority or fraternity house, thinking about careers, internships, things like that. So that's an opportunity that I've had since I've joined the faculty at Hope that has led to some really rich and deep relationships with students.
One of the things you heard Dr. Short-Thompson talking about relative to the experience of her own son at Hope is that if you listen closely, he works directly with the professors. There aren't any teaching assistants, no graduate assistants. He's working directly with the professors, in other words, the experts in their field, and not just as somebody who's passing through. When we talk about professors taking an interest in the students, we're talking about, for example, in my classes, sometimes when a student emails me and says that they have a family problem or an illness, I always tell them, take care of your illness first, get healthy, be better, do well, because in my subject, the history, any subject that we teach, we can always go back and pick up on the subject matter. But what matters most is the individual. We want them to be healthy, we want them to be whole, we want them to be emotionally stable, because if all those things are well, then the learning can take place in a more facilitative environment where they're getting the most out of what we do. And more than that, beyond the classroom, just like Lauren was talking about, when I have students over in Vietnam for the May term, in many cases, the students in Vietnam, they're not familiar with what the Vietnam War was about. We take time to explain to them what happened. They're seeing things that are sometimes shocking. And so we really are very much interested in trying to develop the entire individual. And I'll say this finally, in the history department, people very often come to a history class with a preconception about, we're going to be talking about the French Revolution, the American Revolution. et cetera, and so on. And they don't really, there's questions like, how does this apply to me right now? The way I approach history, I tell my students, we are using this discipline to develop you as a professional. We read in here, we write in here. In every field, in every occupation, there's reading, there's writing, there's comprehension, there's communication that goes on. So it's not just to make them a niche individual, but to prepare them and give them the tools to be able to do a number of things. And I'm not talking about in the standpoint of being a jack of all trades and master of none. I'm talking about being a master of many things and capable of doing anything, any task put before them. So we're really trying to develop our students to become not just competitors, but successful competitors in the global marketplace of the 21st century.
All right, so from my end of things in the chemistry department, I would say that I get the most kind of detailed interactions with students through research. So Provost Short Thompson mentioned that her son was involved in research. Obviously throughout both the natural and applied sciences, the social sciences, really across campus overall, there are research experiences, from one end of campus to the other. And so personally, students join my research lab. The barrier to get into those labs are as simple as simply asking a professor, could you please tell me more about your research? That really opens the door, and from there we find out what interests you, who in the department or perhaps in the division does something that is of interest to you, what meshes with schedules, things like that. And then that's really about all it takes. There's no specific classes in many courses. You don't need to have a background in this material before you get involved. It's simply expressing that interest. Once students become part of my lab, it's always been a point of personal pride that students kind of treat my lab as a second home almost. So you may not be familiar with the physical arrangements specifically in the SCOP Science Center, but my office is directly attached to my research lab. So I can be in my office and my students will come in and simply give me a hello, and they can go up and work up their reaction and things on their schedule as long as I'm in the area. So I don't have to be specifically working with them all the time, particularly once they're more experienced. That second home becomes really obvious as we'll get groups of 2, 3, 4 students that are in there at a time. I often run groups of maybe about 8 or 10 students at the same time. Several will be there, and rather than working on chemistry, they'll be doing things like talking about their recent history class with Professor Johnson. So I'll overhear what they've been talking about in other classes, and sometimes even get dragged into the conversation, which is a little uncomfortable. What do you think about these situations? So this is kind of the beauty of the liberal arts experience. What I would say right now, what is also really fun is we talk about developing those long-lasting relationships. That just in the last few weeks, I've heard from former students. There's 3 of them who just defended PhDs and are now getting jobs in San Diego and Indianapolis and Boston. One just had a baby this last week, and such one more interesting thing in this sort of times, right? I got a wedding invitation a couple of weeks ago, so I stay in touch with my students. And really one of my personal favorite things is I invite all of you, if you get a chance to come to campus, stop by the Science Center and find my office. On one wall of my office, I have a map where all 86 of my current and former research students each have a pin, and it shows where they are now. And so I had the recent grad move from MIT, and now he's moving down to San Diego at a pharmaceutical company. And so that pin goes across the country. So it's one of those things that I get done, not all parts of this job are wonderful. I love it and wouldn't trade it, but there are those trying times, and I get to kind of go back to my lab, interact with the students, and look at that map. And that's just one of the best parts about being at a place like home.
I would add to what Jeff just said so eloquently. If you think that the issue of professors caring about students, think about this. 2 months ago, if you heard a presentation where somebody said, well, we care about our students, every school is going to say that. But in the environment that we're in right now, where people are sitting back and taking time to reflect on what does it mean to be alive, what does it mean to care about each other, and people are rethinking, how should I treat my neighbor, how should I treat my brother, how should I treat my sister, my fellow human being? That's where a lot of people are beginning to reflect on that and think, well, maybe I should do things differently. What most of the people are thinking about doing differently, that was going on at Hope before the current crisis. That is a standard mode of operation. And, we all want students to major in our various disciplines and so on, but the level of care, the competition for our majors is that if I have a student who comes in as a history major, they decide they want to be a chemistry major or a communications major, we care about the student, because like Dr. Short Thompson said, it's what they want to do. Sure, it would serve our needs to have them be a history major, but if they want to be a chemistry major or a communications major, we help steer them to the right person that can help them most in that, because it is about the student first. And this business of caring about the student is not just some type of soft, fuzzy relational talk, because we do care about the students. We are interested in their entire emotional, psychological, physical well-being. But there's the other part where we're also training them in the hard disciplines of being able to get into the workplace, being able to interview, being able to communicate, in other words, to compete as professionals. So there's the one part where there's the caring part, that's all very, very clear, but we're not building robots here. We're not building workers who go out, we're building human beings that go to work. And all that involves taking the whole individual and then giving them the hard skill sets that can have them compete, but at the same time have them compete as individuals who recognize that they're citizens of the United States, citizens of the globe, contributing to each other and doing for each other and helping out their fellow human beings.
I think something for me as a Hope alumni that's been really fulfilling that I've been able to do since I graduated from Hope was to continue relationships by going to Phelps or Cook or LJ's for coffee with professors that have continued to pour into me outside of just being a student, like all of our professors just mentioned. But even more so as a fellow Hope employee in the last few weeks, getting emails from them saying, hey, Danae, I know this is a really busy time in admissions. May 1 is coming up. How can I help you? So as somebody that came out of Hope that is a product of Hope faculty, I can absolutely speak to these people come into your lives for those 4 years at Hope, but even more so, my friends and family that have gone to Hope that are now across the country continue to have really strong relationships with faculty and those sort of mentors as well. So now we're going to get into a question we've prepared for each of them. But again, if you have questions, feel free, write them down and we will make sure that they get answered either tonight or later in the week and connecting you there. So Jeff, I know you just spoke a little bit about how you stay connected with students that graduate from Hope and your students that do research with you. I actually just got this question today of how does Hope really help students go to med school? So especially coming from the natural applied sciences, when a lot of students are looking for a PhD, med school, PA school, how do you feel like Hope really sets students apart for graduate work?
Sure. So I will say, in my normal teaching experience, I do teach organic chemistry, and that tends to be the second year for almost any student who goes into the health professions overall. And unfortunately, it's one of those courses that if you ask current health professionals, what was the worst part about getting there? What is the, the weed out course or something like that? It tends to be organic chemistry. So for those of you out there who are looking to, go into the health professions, I perhaps represent your worst nightmare. So, so one of the things I do when I teach organic chemistry, a lot of it is psychology. So I will tell you that it is something that you absolutely can do, and I will help you every step of the way in getting there. In terms of preparation for it, so the rigor of Hope classes really gets us a long way there. So whether it be graduate school or health profession school, we have had Hope alums who have traveled those paths before you. So we know how to do this. We know how to get students through. Every student has their own unique path, but the general idea of getting students into these programs and prepared to succeed in this program is something that we have done a lot of. So essentially the Hope reputation precedes you and can only help you on the path. In terms of you personally succeeding, some of the things I mentioned, the rigor of the courses, a lot of our students are really nearly fully prepared for some of those daunting exams and entrance exams that are there. The coursework covers all of those materials. So we are helping you prepare for those even as you go through. Some of the other things that we do here on campus is we try to give you some experience of what you're getting into. And so things that you can speak to in terms of applying and moving into those health professions schools. One of the things that's a relatively recent development, probably 3 or 4 years now, is a health advocacy course that we offer. It officially runs through the kinesiology department. This is a 2-semester course where students spend 1 semester really getting into the nuts and bolts of how the health professions work in the community, and then do the second semester getting teamed with a patient in the community, and they become a healthcare advocate for those patients. So that sort of kind of boots on the ground, hands-on experience within the health professions is something that helps students really figure out, this is what I want to do, and this is the path that I can follow. So there's a lot of those sorts of opportunities that are available here on campus that can really help students figure out that this is where they want to go. And I would say, don't look bad at all on your resume and your application.
Awesome, thank you. Lauren, we are going to jump to you. We got a question if you could go and talk a little bit about what a communication major is and maybe what sort of jobs come out of that. And then to follow up, you mentioned a little bit about May terms and that sort of stuff, but maybe to go even deeper into how you've been connecting to your students and your advisees in this virtual world and outside of just Zoom classes. So you actually have 2 questions.
Okay. No pressure, right? Communication major is really very broad. I tell students the great thing about a communication major is it prepares you to do a lot of things, but that's also the tough part about a communication major. So my area of specialty in terms of research has to do with like financial public relations. How do companies talk about how they're performing financially? So I probably most closely fall for an undergrad track in like a public relations marketing type of role. But in the communication department, we also have tracks that you can go into in terms of journalism, TV broadcasting. We have like a global and peace studies concentration. That's a really a cool concentration within the communication major. Interpersonal communication, we have a rhetoric concentrations, like for students who are interested in going to law school, for example. You're talking about argumentation, deliberation, civic engagement. It's such a great sort of pre-law track. And then organizational and corporate communication as well. So not just externally, you as a company, how are you talking to interested audiences, stakeholders, and shareholders, but also if you're in a management role, how do you communicate effectively with your employees? How do you make sure all your employees feel connected to the organization, have strong culture, things like that. So like I said, there's a lot of different paths. You might be in like a management type role. You could go into a public relations type of role, filming, TV personalities, I mean, you name it. And I've been talking a lot with my advisees, like over FaceTime and Zoom the last couple of weeks. A lot of them who are juniors and seniors are super nervous about graduating into this kind of economic environment. And one of the things I tell them is, you have the flexibility with a communication major to be able to navigate this type of environment. And even if, your dream role is to be, on television, reporting the news, you have the flexibility with a communication major to perhaps pivot a little bit and navigate some of those fluctuations. So that's broadly what a communication major is. And then Danae, your next question was about advising and connecting with students and things like that. So yeah, usually on campus, I teach, like I said, quantitative research methods, which usually a lot of the comm majors are nervous about because it's a math, stats class. And then I also teach a lot in the gen ed. So like crisis communication, the communication process. So usually when I'm on campus, I'm doing a lot of like coffee dates and like lunches with students. For quant research methods, I make every student get a cup of coffee with me once throughout the semester. It gives me a chance in a class of 20 to connect with each student one-on-one, say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? It just allows them an opportunity to open up about a subject that they're often a little bit more nervous about. And then for the other courses, with them being gen eds, I talk with a lot of students after class. A lot of them are freshmen and sophomores trying to figure out their major. I'm sitting down with them and just learning a little bit more with, what are their interests. So obviously that's a little bit tricky right now. So I've been doing a lot of Zoom, a lot of emails, a lot of FaceTimes. So I joke, I'll still do a coffee hour. You make your coffee, I'll make my coffee, things like that. So yeah, just as much as I can to keep, an open relationship and help students as much as I can. The other thing is with internship prep right now, that's been kind of tricky. I've had some students who've had internship offers rescinded for the summer, or have had job offers, put on pause for a couple of months until the economy, things sort of shake out. So I've been having lots of meetings with students to talk about like resume, CV, cover letter prep, But then also, okay, can we get creative? Do we need to pivot quickly to a grad program? Do you have the ability to maybe do an unpaid internship and still, keep that connection with the company that you're really passionate about? So right now, just trying to keep in touch with students as much as possible. And I don't know any more than they know. So just trying to help them be as flexible as possible.
As somebody who myself is not very good at math and got a 55% on my first math test I took at Hope, I certainly appreciate people like Lauren being willing to meet for coffee and go over those kind of exams. Quantitative studies are not my thing, so I definitely speak for my students that are also not math minded and appreciate that.
Well, I always say if I can do it, they can do it, because it's not, I was always good at math and science in college and high school, but stats was kind of tricky for me at first. I don't know why it took me so long to really grasp it. And so I just say, it takes time. And if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. And I'm there to, help you along in the process.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. And now we are going to pivot to Fred, who in his intro said he's been at Hope since 2000. So he's obviously seen a lot of students come through Hope, keeping those connections. How would you say you have seen Hope over really the last 20 years continue to change students, or what do you find when you speak to alumni they keep going back to and say, oh, I loved this about my Hope experience? How do you see Hope continuing to impact students long after they've left Hope?
The thing that stands out for most of the students that I had, they remember the interest that the professors took in them as developing professionals, but also as people. I mean, they genuinely wanted to get to know them as individuals, to find out who they were, what they wanted, what their aspirations were, because knowing all that helped the professors figure out how to best advise them, to help them decide classes, how to develop a plan to get out of Hope College in 4 years. The professors are very much aware of the fact that parents and students are under pressure financially, that higher education is changing. So finding out all those kind of questions and doing the kind of things that Jeff talked about and that Lauren talked about, all those things go into the whole package, the whole equation of helping us be better professors and better mentors, better advisors for the students that come to us. So there's a number of things. I could echo a lot of what they said, but just some specific examples of that. Like Jeff pointed out, students will get out and they will write back. Now, some disciplines are will lend themselves more readily to this. People come to a history class, and because history happened 200 years ago, people are wondering, what's this got to do with me today? But I have a student just a couple of months ago who wrote me an email. She was a Hope education major. She was a history minor. And I emphasize, in the history department, we emphasize reading, we emphasize writing, a lot of writing, critical thinking, lots of critical thinking, communication, leadership, all these things. All the things that people in business talk about relative to running a good company or being a good team citizen as it is. Well, she did not necessarily find a job in teaching, but she's working at a pharmaceutical company. She wrote me an email and said that the job that she got, she's already been promoted, she's already ahead of her peers because of stuff that she learned in my classes. The emphasis on writing, the emphasis on critical thinking. I have a student who's written to me, he's an Army officer, a military policeman, another one who's a logistics officer in the Army, or one who's a cop on the south side of Chicago, another person that just got a job as a teacher in Hudsonville, Michigan. They all have written back in the last 2 or 3 years saying that because of what they learned in these classes, they have excelled in front of their peers. And I tell them over and over again, if you can write well, if you can speak well, if you can critically think, you will do better in your career. You will do better personally, because it's not that it's a rare skill, but it is not being emphasized in a lot of places like the way we emphasize it at Hope College. And the great thing again about the college is that we backstop each other. I listened to Jeff talking just now. I wish that I had a professor like him when I was an undergrad, because I was a pre-med major. And at my undergrad institution, you either sink or you swim. You either get it or you don't get it. None of my professors were interested enough to take time with us to do what he just articulated. And the same thing that Lauren's talking about relative to the kind of interest she takes in her students. So it's not just hype, it's not just marketing talk to say that we care about our students. We really do care because we want to see them succeed. And when it comes down to things like resume revision and so forth, I have a student right now He and I are working on the revision of his resume because he's in the process of transitioning to a new job. He called me up and says, "Hey, Professor Johnson, can you help me with this?" I said, "Not a problem. Let's get to work on it." Because, it is not, it may seem trite, it may seem cliche-ish, yeah, but it's the real deal when you care about people. And we care about these students who come to us. We take seriously the fact that we have parents' most precious possessions that they are entrusting to us to nurture, to guide, and to help them prepare them for what they're going to do after college. That is something that I have not met a single person on the campus, faculty, staff, administration, from top to bottom, from across the board, that doesn't take that mission seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to bring Dr. Short-Thompson back on and ask some of the questions that were asked in the YouTube. So one of the questions that was asked was, and Fred, you just spoke about this, but maybe if one of you can go into a little bit more detail. You've discussed how the whole student is valued and important to faculty at Hope. How does Hope College and their faculty help nurture and care for the mental health of their students?
The mental health of our students?
Yes, yep, the mental health.
One of the things that's been so challenging about this current environment we're in doing remote teaching is that we can't really get a good idea, where our students are, how they're looking, how they're sitting. When you're in a classroom with your students, I'm always taking notice of how they're sitting, their body language, their tone of voice. When I ask them a question, all these things, not to get into their business, but to understand, how are you doing? How are they doing? To make sure that they're on point for that class. And then sometimes a student will come and say, and I've had a death in the family. You can see that they're emotionally distraught. And we have counseling services on campus. We have so many agencies on campus to send a student, and we take personal interest and get them to the people that they can talk to get some relief. So we are very much well aware of the fact that a student's mental health, it's not just their problem, it's our issue as well. So we take ownership of that. I'm not a psychologist, but again, that student is my responsibility, and that student is somebody's child. That's somebody's precious possession, and I want to make sure I get them there to somebody that can actually help them and help them get to wherever they need to be as far as talking to someone and getting the help that they need. We take that stuff very seriously.
Yeah, and just to echo some of what Fred has said, because I do teach a lot of freshmen, and sometimes that transition is really tough. You're living on your own, maybe you're having issues with a roommate, you're managing your schedule for the first time, all these sort of factors. And sometimes there are these mental health issues that maybe were in control during high school, or maybe haven't been there before, that pop up. And Hope does take it very seriously. And one of the things that I really enjoyed over the last 2.5 years here at Hope is, just like Fred said, yes, we have the professionals on campus, we connect those students, but the classes are small enough. I teach in the gen ed, and I know every single one of those students. I know their interests. I know a little bit about their background. And if those students open up, I just have, like Katie, I came from a very large public schools system, all the way through my undergrad, master's, and PhD. And I just love that at Hope, I know my students, and I'm not just saying that. It used to break my heart when, as a grad student teaching, I would get asked to write letters of recommendation because there weren't any full-time faculty who knew the students. And here, as a faculty member, I know my students, even if they're freshmen, even if it's just a gen ed that they're checking off the requirement. I know them, and Hope just provides that environment in which, like Fred said, if I notice something seems off in class, or they're dressing differently or acting differently, it's not weird for me to reach out or send an email or say, can you stop by, let's chat about how you're doing.
If I have a student that has not come to class for a certain period of time, I don't just take roll and keep on moving with the lessons. We follow up, and I send emails. What's going on? Is there anything I can do? And I tell them, I don't need to get into the weeds of your business. I'm not trying to get into your personal life, but if there's something happening in your life that is impacting you pursuing your education, I do need to know about that. Because oftentimes, if we know about it, then we can do something about it. We can fix it. We can facilitate them getting there. Sometimes people just don't know how to bring those kind of problems to the table. there's still a great stigma in the United States, and this is no great secret across the country, that when people are dealing with emotional or mental issues, they tend to keep it to themselves. Well, we don't want that. We want to know that, so we can go ahead and get it out in the open and deal with it and get them back on track so they can continue down that path of success and excellence that they want. And we know that they want it.
Danae, the one thing that I would add is that not only are the faculty wonderful, but the staff are as well. And we have not just a holistic education, but a Christian college at Hope. And so we have staff who are in campus ministries who extend themselves to our students. And if that's a way in which they can relate and work through problems, it's an extra bonus to be at Hope. So I just can't say enough about the people that extend themselves to our students. And one of the things when we make decisions, what we ask ourselves over and over again is, what's the right decision for the students? What's best for the students? And so I think it's important to be in a place where we're always thinking about the whole student, not just the academic student, but the full student, thinking about them socially and physically and mentally and emotionally, spiritually. It's a full person that you are at Hope.
So Katie just touched on this, but we got a question in regards to how faith works in your classroom. So can one of you or a couple of you touch on how you incorporate Hope's Christian mission into your classroom with your students?
In the modern European course, one of the things that I go over very early in the semester is the Protestant Reformation. And we get into some of the details of what was going on in 1517 that led Martin Luther to do what he did. And instead of sticking to the secular historical fact of it all, which of course I want them to know the date of the Reformation, who was involved, Martin Luther's background, all that. We at Hope College have the room, because who we are, to venture off into the cosmological, the theological meaning of what Luther did as well, what it meant for the changes in Christianity, the Nicene Creed, all these things, the history of Christianity, what it meant, and what it meant for people to have an argument about, was Jesus really, dead on the cross? Was he fully human and God, or was it some split, partitioning and so on? So we can have those kind of conversations. And when it comes to things, for example, like genocides and people who are doing things, and we had to wrestle with this conundrum, like the Holocaust. We're trying to figure out, what does it mean when these kind of things happen on an earth that is overseen by an all-powerful God? What are we supposed to do with that? And oftentimes, the issue, the objective is not to find the answer, because sometimes the answer cannot be known. It can't ultimately be known only by God. But it's good to engage in the conversation. And because we are who we are as a college, it's very interesting. When I got out of grad school, I wanted to go to a research-oriented university to do research, write books, and have my TA take care of the students. Well, I started teaching adjunct in grad school at small liberal arts institutions like Hope, and I found out something very interesting. At the Research One school that I wanted to go to, if you had mentioned things like Jesus or the Bible, things like that in the classroom, people, there may have been an issue of First Amendment, and people thinking you're imposing your faith on them. In our environment, you can do this freely. And it turns out that I have more freedom to talk about everything, including this stuff, as well as the more secular version. So I find it to be very liberating, very, very energizing. And for students of faith, it puts them in a comfortable situation. And for those who are questioning and maybe on the fence about some things, it gives them some different things to chew on as well.
One of the things I talk a lot about in the Gen Ed is this is an opportunity for students to take, a faith, maybe if they're coming from a Christian household, of their parents or their family, and to really interrogate it and think about, like, what does this mean for me as an adult? How do I take this and make this mine or not? And I think Hope provides a really wonderful space to have these conversations within the classroom, but also one-on-one with students who are questioning or maybe aren't from a faith background. But one of the things that I really have found meaningful, because it was maybe the most nerve-wracking part of coming from a public school to a private school with, an explicitly Christian mission, was, what does that mean for me? How do I bring that into the classroom? to talk about like what is ethical communication. It's no longer just, Aristotle and Socrates and these sort of big rhetorers of communication, but it's also, what does the Christian faith tell us? What does the Christian worldview tell us is ethical communication? And in my crisis communication class, we talk a lot about news media, media effects, things like that. And what does it mean to be an ethical communicator, in the world in which we're living in? And I think it just really opens up and broadens and deepens the discussion that we can have.
I was asked a number of years ago, I was invited to do a talk on a campus that should go unnamed. They also asked me to do a chapel service. Well, at their chapel service, they have mandatory attendance. And so the students came because they were supposed to. They were told they had to be there. They came, they sat, they slouched, they nodded, they slept. And okay, while I wasn't happy about that as a public speaker, I came back to Hope's campus where there is not mandatory chapel service, but chapel 3 times a week is filled to standing room because we have a dynamic campus ministry, and there's great things going on. And I think that the attendance on any one of our weekly chapel services speaks for itself.
So we are running out of time, but I'm going to ask one more question. Maybe Jeff, you can kick it off. What is one thing that you would like our prospective students to know about Hope? They've got a couple more weeks until May 1. They're trying to make a decision. Is there something that you feel like this is what I want every prospective parent and student to hear about Hope before they make a decision?
I would really just kind of echo so much of what we've already heard tonight about the relationships with students and how much that we value each of our students as individuals. One of the things I would say, kind of maybe from a more humorous standpoint, from the kind of stoic Scandinavian background, that this relationships with the professors and so on is optional. So I encourage students to come by and get to know me and things, but it's totally your choice if you don't want anything to do with me. So I, for one, the kind of social distancing, I was born for this. But really, so that the opportunities are there to develop these relationships, it's up to you as students to decide how much you want to engage in those and take advantage of that.
So I would just add that you have all seen a little bit about what these faculty are like to interact with. They're warm, they're friendly, they're professional, they're smart, but each one of them to a person is an award-winning faculty member. So Dr. Hewitt just won the Towsley Award, which is the greatest junior faculty award that we bestow upon our faculty. And yet here she is, humble and lovely and wonderful to interact with. You never know. Similarly, Dr. Fred Johnson was just awarded a Daughters of the American Revolution a Medal of Honor this year. And so that's a really huge honor, as all of you know. And if you interact with him, you get a sense of why he has earned that award. And then, of course, we also have Dr. Jeff Johnson, who is an American Academy of Science Fellow, which is the top honor for scientists. So look around, you're in really good company. And these are really wonderful colleagues for me, but also really amazing faculty members. And they're 3 of many. We have 270 who are outstanding, great colleagues of theirs. And so you just would be in really good hands here at Hope.
I think mine was sort of along similar lines as Katie's. I think when I was looking at colleges, I was really focused on maybe brand recognition and, I get the draw. I did the big public school thing. And I thought that the best education was there. And I think for many people, that's a really good fit. But I was always interested in Hope. It was always on my radar. And when I had the opportunity to jump back, I didn't even think twice about it. And the faculty at my very large Research 1 institution where, they wanted you to go into an R1 research intensive job, they all said, oh my gosh, Hope is such a good school. There is world-class faculty there. And so I would say, think about like the opportunities you're going to have as a student to interact with faculty, the opportunities for research, the opportunities to do one-on-one career counseling. Maybe, we're definitely not as big, right, as other public state schools, and that's totally fine. It just gives you a different experience. And it doesn't mean that your education is less or less rigorous. You're studying with world-class faculty here that do have a national and international reputation, many of them. So I would say as a junior faculty, it's been an incredible place to learn from my colleagues. And I would think as an undergraduate, it couldn't be beat, frankly.
I heard recently a public official on a news report saying that they wanted their colleges in their states to produce good workers. And I took exception to that. I said, no, we don't want that. We want human beings to go to work. So what we're working on building up the human being and making them experts so they can go to work and be experts on the job, but also which means being very good at what they do, being sharp at what they do, being the best of the best, but also we don't want to lose sight of the fact that the person who's very good at what they do, who's sharp at what they do, the best of the best, that they're also a human being. That's what we're doing at Hope College.
So we are running out of time, and please know that if you asked a question tonight, we will make sure that we get an answer to you individually sometime this week from your admissions rep or connecting you to one of these faculty that you're interested in. Thank you to each of our panelists for joining us. I know hopefully after the last few weeks, we're all more comfortable with these Zoom calls. So certainly for prospective students and families, thank you for joining us in the midst of certainly crazy and unprecedented times. I know with talking with my students and parents, this is a really tough decision already, knowing this is going to be a very different world in the next 4 months or 5 months. And so thank you for joining us. We're excited that you're interested in Hope. Let us know as your admissions reps how we can be helpful for you. We want to be there for you. We obviously love Hope. I love Hope so much. I would not have even dreamed that I would be here still 4 years later, and I'm so grateful that I am. And so please continue to reach out to us and let us know how we can help in making this decision as smooth and as easy as we can in these really hard times. So thanks for joining us. We will be live again here tomorrow night for the Boerigter Center of Calling and Career. And then make sure to tune in the rest of the week and then again on April 20th.